Dear Chosen One, first and foremost, I want to extend my deepest gratitude to those of you who have supported this channel through Super Thanks. Your generosity is truly appreciated, and I'm so thankful for your belief in this message. It helps to keep this community strong and growing. If you haven't had the chance to donate yet, don't worry. Just being here, engaging with the content, and sharing your energy is a blessing in itself. Now, Chosen One, have you ever had someone underestimate the power of your name? A witch thought she was safe when she handed over your secrets. She believed his family would be her armor, her refuge from the chaos she feared. But she didn't understand. Your name isn't just a label, it's a crown, a force that bends the world to its will. You were chosen, not by chance, but by the weight of what your name carries, a legacy that commands respect, even in silence. As the truth unravels, the illusion of protection she clung to crumbles. His family may have power, but your name holds more, and those who underestimate it will soon learn the chosen ones are not so easily undone. Now, if you feel the strength and power of your own name, I invite you to comment below with the number 999. This is not just a number, it's a symbol of divine authority, of standing in your truth, of aligning with the strength that your name carries. Let this be a declaration to the universe and to all the chosen ones who are reading this. You are walking in power and purpose. When you comment 999, you're not just acknowledging your own strength, you're also affirming that you are part of a greater, unstoppable force. So go ahead, let's flood this space with the energy of the chosen ones, united and ready to rise. Your presence here matters. Let the world see who you truly are. God's chosen ones. A witch sold your info, thinking her family would protect her, but your name holds weight. Chosen One, the witch in this case, owed you everything. Her family, a fortress built around her, provided a safety net every time she faltered. They cleaned up after her mistakes. They made excuses for her bad decisions, and they gave her the courage to keep being reckless. In her eyes, they were her protection, her unwavering support. She never feared the consequences of her actions because deep down, she believed that no matter what she did, they would always have her back. But what happens when that shield begins to crumble? Have you ever thought about the danger of relying too heavily on someone else's protection? This witch had never faced the real world alone. And when she was presented with a plan from the karmic feminine, her very own blood, she didn't hesitate. Why would she? It was just another favor, another debt to repay in her mind. But there's one crucial question she never stopped to ask herself. What would the cost be? When you make decisions without weighing the consequences, you invite chaos. The Bible warns us in Proverbs 14:15, "The simple believe anything, but the prudent give thought to their steps." This witch wasn't thinking prudently. She was thinking selfishly, believing that her family's past protection would somehow continue indefinitely, without realizing the gravity of her next move. Could it be that she was blinded by her comfort, unable to see the road ahead? Think about someone like the infamous celebrity Lindsay Lohan. For years, she lived as if there were no consequences to her actions, constantly shielded by her fame and the people who helped her. But when the world stopped protecting her, the consequences of her reckless behavior caught up. She faced the public's judgment, legal issues, and deep personal struggles. What would have happened if she had paused, reflected, and thought about the consequences of her actions earlier? Then there's the story of the famous writer J.K. Rowling, who faced immense scrutiny and challenges early in her career. However, she didn't let the fear of failure or judgment stop her. When the world seemed to be against her, she continued to move forward, but with a deep awareness of the weight of each decision. She didn't let herself be carried away by the comfort of protection. She understood that every step counted. And what about you, chosen one? When you make decisions, are you considering the long-term impact, or are you relying on temporary safety nets? Do you think that your past actions will always shield you from what's coming? Or could the weight of your choices be catching up, just like it did for the witch? Remember, in Galatians 6:7, do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows. The witch thought she could act without consequence, but the truth is, her actions would eventually come back to her. She never considered that the karmic forces she was messing with weren't so easily managed. The protection she once had would no longer shield her when the repercussions of her choices caught up. Chosen one, have you ever encountered someone who believed that they were untouchable? Someone who thought their actions had no repercussions because they had always been shielded from the consequences of their past mistakes. The witch crossed a line she shouldn't have, illegally accessing your personal records. She ventured into territory that wasn't hers to invade, thinking there were no boundaries she couldn't cross. She typed in your name, scrolled through your private information, and took everything she could, everything that wasn't hers to take. And what did she think of it? She thought it was nothing, just data, just numbers, just words on a screen. But have you ever considered how something that seems insignificant to one person can carry immense weight for another? What drives someone to believe they can act without accountability? Was it her arrogance, or simply the misguided belief that she was invincible, untouchable? This time, the witch handed over your most personal information without a second thought. She didn't question why they wanted it. She didn't care about the implications. In her mind, it was a debt owed. Her loyalty to his family had always been rewarded, and now it was time to repay that loyalty. But have you ever stopped to wonder, what happens when the balance of loyalty and duty tips over into betrayal? Proverbs 11:1 warns us, "The Lord detests dishonest scales, but accurate weights find favor with him." What did she think she was doing? Breaking the rules, bending the system, and stealing your private information. How could she not see that what she was doing was not only illegal, but also morally wrong? She was playing a dangerous game, one that could unravel everything she had relied on. Think about someone like Edward Snowden, the former NSA contractor who exposed government surveillance programs. He crossed boundaries, leaking sensitive information that had far-reaching consequences. Snowden believed he was serving a higher purpose, but the world saw it as a betrayal. His actions shattered lives, and in his case, the line between right and wrong blurred. How many times have we heard of people acting with the belief that they are justified, only to discover the deep scars they've left behind? Then there's the story of Martha Stewart, the well-known businesswoman and television personality who was convicted of insider trading in 2001. Just like the witch, she believed she could get away with bending the rules. But when the consequences caught up with her, they were swift and unforgiving. Her image, her career, and her legacy were all affected by a decision that seemed harmless at the time. What would have happened if she'd thought about the bigger picture before acting? And here's another real-life example. In 2019, Facebook faced a massive scandal when it was revealed that it had allowed third-party companies to access personal data of millions of users without their consent. The company crossed lines they should never have crossed, believing that the data was just numbers on a screen. But when the public discovered what had happened, it became clear just how serious the breach of privacy was. But what about you, chosen one? Have you ever acted out of blind loyalty, believing that the rules didn't apply to you, or that your past protection would shield you from the consequences? Are you walking a path that you think is safe because others have always cleaned up after your messes? Have you thought about the consequences of crossing a line that was never meant to be crossed? As Galatians 6:7 says, "Do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows." The witch's actions may seem small, but they carry weight. And just like that, the consequences of what she did, what she gave away without thinking, will find their way back to her. So, chosen one, how do you navigate the lines between loyalty and morality? Are you aware of the consequences of bending the rules? Or are you living with the belief that you are untouchable until it's too late? Chosen one, the witch didn't realize the magnitude of what she had just stepped into. She believed that power came from knowing the right people, from having the right connections, from being part of the right circles. But she never understood that your name carries a weight far greater than mere influence. Your name holds a spiritual force, a divine protection that cannot be shaken by money, favors, or human manipulation. Have you ever thought about the power behind your own name, Chosen One? What if it's more than just a label? What if it's a key to something far greater than what the world can offer? In her mind, this was just another favor, a small favor she could repay. Another secret, another task buried under the veil of privilege and power. But this time she was mistaken. She crossed a line she could never uncross. She committed a crime with real, irreversible consequences. Once she leaked that information, there was no turning back. She didn't understand that some actions, no matter how small they seem, can change the course of a life forever. Do you realize the magnitude of your actions, Chosen One? What consequences are lurking behind decisions that you think are harmless? The Bible warns us in Romans 2:6, God will repay each person according to what they have done. The witch thought that her actions would go unnoticed, that the price wouldn't be too high. But the truth is, when you tamper with something as sacred as another person's identity, you tap into forces beyond your comprehension. Have you ever wondered if the world's fleeting sense of justice could be eclipsed by divine judgment? What happens when someone challenges forces far more powerful than they can imagine? Consider the story of whistleblower Chelsea Manning, who leaked classified military documents in 2010. Manning, like the witch, thought her actions were justified by her personal beliefs, that the power of truth would protect her. But the reality was much different. Her actions had consequences that no amount of influence or power could undo. The life she knew was changed forever. Manning didn't realize the weight of the forces she was going up against, and now she's forever marked by the consequences of that decision. Could you ever find yourself in a situation where your own sense of righteousness blinds you to the larger forces at play? And then there's the story of Bernie Madoff, who for years operated one of the largest Ponzi schemes in history. He thought his influence, his wealth, and his connections could shield him from the truth. But when the fraud was uncovered, everything came crashing down. His name, once synonymous with trust and power, became a symbol of betrayal and loss. Madoff's fall from grace was swift and unforgiving. How often do we see those who believe they are untouchable, only to realize too late that no amount of power can protect them from the consequences of their own actions? What about you, Chosen One? Do you ever think about the true power behind your name, the spiritual weight it carries? Have you considered the lasting impact of your decisions, knowing that some things can never be undone? When you take action, do you truly understand the depth of the forces you might be challenging? As Hebrews 10:30 reminds us, "For we know him who said, 'It is mine to avenge, I will repay,' and again, 'The Lord will judge his people.'" The witch may have thought she was just doing a favor, but the truth is, she was playing with forces that transcend human understanding. Her fate was sealed the moment she made that choice, and now she must face what comes next. Chosen one, do you understand the weight of your name? Are you prepared for the consequences that follow when you make decisions that cross the line? Or do you, like the witch, think that power and privilege will shield you from the truth? The reality is that no one is beyond the reach of divine justice, and every action, no matter how small, carries consequences that echo through eternity. Chosen one, the witch thought her devotion would solidify her place in the world. She thought that by binding herself to his family with every act of loyalty, she would secure a position of value and trust. She believed they would see her as someone worthy of respect, someone who could be counted on no matter the cost. She thought that by sacrificing her own judgment and doing whatever was asked of her, she would earn a place of security. But what she failed to understand is that blind loyalty to the wrong cause only leads to ruin. Do you see how fragile trust can be when it's placed in the wrong hands? Chosen one, could it be that we sometimes act with the best intentions, only to walk ourselves straight into the very danger we hope to avoid? She thought that by continuing to serve his family, she would gain favor, that she would become indispensable. She thought that power was in the hands of those with influence, that loyalty to them would shield her from anything that could harm her. She never once questioned the path she was on. She never stopped to wonder if the road she was walking would lead to her own downfall. And yet, she signed her own fate. Her misguided actions were not the result of betrayal alone. They were a sign of her blindness to the truth. She never considered the weight of her decisions, the impact they would have on her life. Do you ever wonder, chosen one, how many times have you, or those around you, moved forward without understanding the full scope of what's at stake? Because when you move against a chosen one, there is no escape. There's no mercy, no second chances, no safety net to catch you when you fall. The witch thought she could walk away unscathed, that her connections, her loyalty, would be enough to protect her. But this wasn't just betrayal. It was a felony, a crime that cannot be undone. The moment she leaked that private information, her fate was sealed. It wasn't just a betrayal of trust. It was a violation of something much larger, something sacred. Do you realize, chosen one, how sacred your name is? How much weight it carries? Have you ever stopped to reflect on the power behind your name, the divine protection that surrounds you? There is no place where someone can hide when they come against you, for God's protection and justice are far beyond the reach of human power. In the Bible, we are reminded in Psalm 109, verse 5, "They repay me evil for good and hatred for my friendship." This speaks to the reality of betrayal. It often comes from those you least expect, from those you've trusted. The witch thought that her actions would be seen as a favor, something that would grant her more power and security. But in reality, what she didn't realize was that every choice, every action, carries a deeper consequence. The Bible is clear in Luke 8:17, "For nothing is hidden that will not be disclosed, nor is anything secret that will not be made known and come to light." When you act in secrecy, thinking no one will see, the truth always emerges in the end. Consider the story of Mark Felt, famously known as Deep Throat. He believed that by exposing the Watergate scandal, he was protecting the country from corruption. He thought that his loyalty to a higher cause justified his actions. But in the end, the consequences of his leaks were far more complicated. Felt's actions, though seen as heroic by some, were also viewed as a betrayal of those who had trusted him. He didn't consider that revealing secrets could cost him everything, and the weight of those actions forever changed his life. Do you see how even those who think they are acting for the greater good can still face the consequences of their choices? Look at the case of Bernie Madoff, whose blind loyalty to his own ambitions and desire for control led to one of the biggest financial scandals in history. Madoff thought he could maintain his power and protect his empire, but in the end the truth came to light, and his name became synonymous with greed and fraud. He believed his connections could shield him from justice, but the damage he caused was too great to avoid. What if he had paused to consider the bigger picture before acting? Would the consequences have been different? And there's the infamous case of Hollywood mogul Harvey Weinstein, who manipulated those around him with promises of power and fame, all the while betraying the trust of so many in the process. Weinstein thought that his position and influence could protect him from the repercussions of his actions. But in the end, the truth came for him, and he found himself exposed. His name became a symbol of abuse and corruption, forever linked to the destruction he caused. His fall from grace shows that even the most powerful can't escape the justice that comes when they move against the chosen. But what about you, chosen one? Have you ever walked through life believing that loyalty would shield you from the consequences of your actions? Have you ever placed your trust in people or situations that weren't worthy of it, believing that the protection of those around you would always be enough? It's easy to forget how fragile loyalty can be when we aren't aware of the true cost of betrayal. Have you thought about what could happen if your loyalty was tested? Are you willing to stand firm when the consequences of your actions come to light, knowing that divine justice always prevails? As Romans 2:6 reminds us, God will repay each person according to what they have done. Every choice you make matters. Every action has a ripple effect that cannot be undone. And like the witch, when you move against a chosen one, there is no escaping the divine justice that will follow. Your fate, chosen one, is in your hands. What will you choose? Chosen one, have you ever known someone who believed they were invincible, convinced that they could escape the consequences of their actions just because they had the right connections? The witch thought she was careful, that her actions would never come to light. She believed that she was untouchable, hidden beneath the protection of her boyfriend's powerful family. They had pulled strings for her before, covered up her past mistakes, and provided a shield that seemed impenetrable. In her mind, this was just another favor, another quiet transaction in the shadows, something that would disappear without a trace. But have you ever wondered, chosen one, what happens when someone believes their past protection will shield them from something much bigger than they can control? She never considered that this time was different. This time she crossed a legal line. She accessed information that was never meant for her eyes, confidential, protected by law, and completely off-limits to anyone without proper authorization. In her arrogance, she believed that she could slip through the cracks. But have you thought about the consequences of breaching such boundaries? What happens when you think you're above the law and find out that the system doesn't let you get away with it? She used her position, her access, her clearance to pull records she had no right to view. With no hesitation, she handed over the sensitive information to someone who intended to use it against you. To her, it was harmless, just data, just information. She convinced herself it was just another piece in someone else's scheme, nothing more than a collection of numbers and words. But do you see, chosen one, how small actions can snowball into something far greater than we ever anticipate? Have you ever thought about how the digital world holds the power to trace even the most innocent of actions? What she failed to realize, however, was that in the digital world, every move is trackable, every login, every click, every document accessed. Each of them leaves a footprint. Every unauthorized action leaves a record. Nothing in the digital age goes unnoticed for long. Just like how every action you take, whether visible or not, carries spiritual consequences, so too does every action online. Do you ever wonder, chosen one, how many things you've done, even in the privacy of your own space, have left their mark? Could you be unknowingly walking in the footsteps of consequences that are yet to catch up? The moment the witch breached those records, she activated something far bigger than she ever imagined. The system, far more advanced and aware than she could have understood, caught it. Red flags went up. The authorities were notified. There is no hiding from a breach like this. No matter how carefully you think you've covered your tracks, the digital world doesn't forgive or forget. In fact, it never forgets. Just like how in life, once a wrong is committed, it will eventually come to light, regardless of how long it takes. The Bible warns us in Numbers 32:23, "But if you fail to do this, you will be sinning against the Lord, and you may be sure that your sin will find you out." No matter how well hidden, no matter how carefully protected, sin, whether digital or physical, has a way of catching up with those who think they can escape its reach. Consider the story of Edward Snowden, who revealed classified information about global surveillance programs in 2013. He thought his actions were for the greater good, but the moment he leaked that information, he set off a chain of events that could not be undone. Snowden's every move was tracked, investigated, and analyzed. The breach was a federal crime, and while he believed his motives were justified, the legal consequences followed him, no matter how carefully he had planned his steps. Does this not show us that no matter how small we believe our actions to be, they always leave a trace? And think of the case of Facebook and the Cambridge Analytica scandal. The company allowed millions of users' personal data to be harvested without their consent, believing they could sweep it under the rug. But once the breach was discovered, it became a global scandal that no amount of money or influence could bury. The digital footprint of their actions could not be erased. What if those in positions of power had realized that their actions were not as hidden as they thought? Then there's the story of the notorious hack of Sony Pictures in 2014, where confidential emails and documents were leaked by cyber attackers. The executives thought they could protect their reputation, but the breach exposed everything. The investigation that followed was thorough and relentless. The data they thought they had safely secured became a weapon used against them. What does this teach us, chosen one? That no matter how protected you think your secrets are, the system will always find a way to expose them. Have you ever wondered how many times your own secrets might be at risk, even without your knowledge? The witch believed her family's influence would bury this breach, just as they had done before. She thought they would make it disappear into the shadows, using their connections and power to erase her mistake. But this time it was different. This wasn't just a small mistake. This was a federal crime. Data breaches of this magnitude don't get swept under the rug. The authorities are watching, they are digging, they are investigating. There's no place to hide, no corner to run to. And as 1 Corinthians 4:5 reminds us, "Therefore judge nothing before the appointed time. Wait until the Lord comes. He will bring to light what is hidden in darkness, and will expose the motives of the heart." Every action, every sin, every breach of trust, no matter how well hidden, will eventually be exposed in the light. Chosen one, have you ever thought about how the legal system doesn't care about who you know or how powerful your connections are? It only cares about one thing: evidence. And when the evidence is airtight, there's no room for escape. The witch thought she was operating in secrecy, thinking she could escape undetected. But what she didn't realize is that every move she made left a glowing trail behind her, one so obvious, so incriminating, that there is no way to talk her way out of it. Do you see how often people think they're invisible, only for the truth to shine a light on their actions? As the Bible reminds us in Numbers 32:23, "But if you fail to do this, you will be sinning against the Lord, and you may be sure that your sin will find you out." The truth will always come to light, no matter how well hidden it seems. No excuses, no loopholes, no way to get out of it. The deeper they dig, the worse it becomes. This wasn't a simple slip-up or a mistake. This wasn't an accident. This was deliberate, premeditated, criminal. How many times have we seen someone who believed they could hide, only for their own actions to expose them? Can anyone truly escape when the truth starts unraveling everything they thought was safe? Just as the Bible says in Luke 8:17, "For nothing is hidden that will not be disclosed, nor is anything secret that will not be made known and come to light." Everything done in the dark will eventually be exposed. The web that she helped create is now unraveling around her. She tried to harm you, but all she did was destroy herself. You see, chosen one, when someone goes against you, divine justice steps in. And divine justice does not show mercy. Have you ever wondered how justice works in ways we cannot always see, but it always catches up to those who think they can avoid it? As Proverbs 12:19 warns, "Truthful lips endure forever, but a lying tongue lasts only a moment." The lies may last temporarily, but truth will endure. She believed she was invisible, a shadow hiding behind a powerful family, a pawn moving through life under the protection of those who had always pulled strings for her. She never once considered that the very web she helped weave could one day entangle her too. But now it's all coming undone. Have you ever witnessed someone's belief in their own invincibility, only to watch it crumble as the truth surfaces? What happens when the very protection you rely on becomes the thing that exposes you? This wasn't just her mistake. She was a small part of something far bigger, something darker. The karmic feminine, the true puppet master, had been orchestrating this from the very beginning. She whispered in ears, planted seeds of doubt, and carefully turned people against you. How often do we underestimate the power of those working behind the scenes, making things happen that we may not even be aware of? Have you ever wondered how many times people are manipulated without realizing it? She knew exactly what she was doing. She knew exactly who to use. This woman had been protected before, slipping through cracks, avoiding consequences, and relying on the family's influence to keep her record clean. She was comfortable, overconfident. She believed nothing could touch her. But when the karmic feminine fed her lies about you, she didn't hesitate. She didn't question it. She obeyed without a second thought. What would you do in her place, chosen one? Could you see through the lies, or would you too fall victim to manipulation? Blind loyalty made her reckless. She thought leaking your information was a small act of devotion, a simple favor to prove her worth, her usefulness. She believed it would make her valuable, irreplaceable, but in her desperate need for approval, she couldn't see the trap she was walking into. Have you ever made a choice out of loyalty, only to realize later that it led you into a situation you never intended? How often do we get lost in our desire to please others without realizing the cost? Because here's the truth, chosen one, deception always collapses under the weight of truth. Every step she took is now being retraced. Every action is being logged. Every digital fingerprint examined. The investigation is exposing far more than she could have ever imagined. The lies she told, the secrets she hid, they're all coming to light. Do you understand, chosen one, how the truth always finds its way to the surface? No matter how deep you try to bury it, it will eventually be revealed. As John 8:32 says, "Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." Truth has the power to bring freedom, but it also has the power to destroy the lies that bind us. This betrayal wasn't just about her, it's about the entire network she was working with. Authorities aren't stopping with her. They're pulling the entire thread. One by one, everyone involved is being dragged into the light. This isn't just about one individual anymore. It's about the whole system, the whole web, and everyone who played a part in it. What happens when one person's actions unravel an entire system? How far-reaching do the consequences go when the truth starts to spread? As 1 Peter 4:5 reminds us, "But they will have to give account to him who is ready to judge the living and the dead." The time will come when everyone must face the consequences of their actions, no matter how hidden they thought they were. Then consider the story of Martha Stewart, who thought her position and connections would protect her from the consequences of insider trading. But in the end, the truth was impossible to hide, and her reputation, once spotless, was forever tainted. Can you see how quickly the mighty can fall when the truth comes for them? And take a look at the downfall of Elizabeth Holmes, founder of Theranos. She was once hailed as a tech visionary, but when the lies she built her company on were exposed, her entire world crumbled. Holmes thought she could outsmart the system, but in the end, the truth surfaced, and no amount of manipulation could save her. And in 2015, the Volkswagen emissions scandal shocked the world. The company had used deception to cover up illegal practices, thinking they could hide the truth. But when the evidence surfaced, the entire network of deception unraveled, dragging down even the highest executives involved. What do these stories teach us, chosen one? That no matter how carefully we try to hide the truth, it will always find a way to be revealed. Chosen one, what about you? Are you aware of how your actions might be tracked and exposed? Do you think the things you do in secret will stay hidden forever? Or do you trust that justice, divine and human, will eventually reveal everything? Chosen one, the witch initially thought the situation was manageable. She was confident that the family would protect her, just as they always had. She trusted in the shield of their power, believing that no matter what happened, they would have her back. But something is different this time. The karmic feminine, the one who secretly pulls the strings, has fallen silent. The boyfriend's family, who had always stepped in to save her, are now avoiding her. They are not fighting for her, they're not pulling strings. They are letting her take the fall. Why? Because now that the law is involved, they see what she couldn't. Do you ever wonder, chosen one, how often people place their faith in things, or people that can't truly protect them? What happens when the consequences of our actions are no longer within our control? This time, the witch's offense is no minor mistake. This isn't something they can simply sweep under the rug. This is a federal crime, a data breach, a felony with consequences too big to ignore or hide. The truth always comes to light, no matter how much someone believes they can escape it. Can you feel the weight of this moment, chosen one? How often do we make decisions that seem insignificant in the moment, only for the magnitude of the consequences to hit us when it's too late? And so the same people she trusted are stepping away. The protection she relied on is gone. The influence she counted on has become useless. She thought she was untouchable, but now she stands alone, watching as everything she built begins to collapse around her. Not because someone came after her, but because truth always catches up. And this time, there is no way out. How many times have we seen someone's confidence crumble when the truth finally reveals itself? Can you imagine the panic of realizing that you are no longer shielded by the things you once thought invincible? Chosen one, she placed all her faith in them. They had protected her before, covered up her mistakes, and pulled the right strings to keep her record clean. Every time she slipped up, they made it disappear. She thought this time would be no different, but this time it is different. This isn't some petty mistake or a small family secret. This is a federal crime. The Bible reminds us in Galatians 6:7, "Do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows." The seeds of her actions are now being harvested, and there's no way to avoid the consequences. The people she trusted are backing away. At first, they told her to stay calm. "We'll handle it." She clung to those words, believing everything would be fine. But soon, the calls stopped. The reassurances faded. The silence grew louder. Do you see how easily people can slip away when things get too complicated? Chosen one, how many times have we held on to false promises, only to find out too late that those promises were empty? She began to realize, this time she's on her own. She underestimated the power of your name. She thought leaking your information would be easy, that it would disappear into the void, unnoticed, forgotten. She didn't expect consequences, and now she's left alone to face them. Do you ever think about the weight of your own name, chosen one, the divine protection it carries? How often do we underestimate the power of what we represent? Now, the same system she thought would protect her is closing in. The authorities aren't just looking at her, they're looking at everyone involved. The boyfriend's family, once untouchable, is now being scrutinized. Their connections are being examined, their past favors uncovered. The Bible in Proverbs 26:27 says, "Whoever digs a pit will fall into it. If someone rolls a stone, it will roll back on them." The stones they thought they'd rolled in secret are now coming back to crush them, and they don't like it. They built their power on secrecy, on influence that stayed in the shadows. But now, those shadows are being ripped apart. They're not just trying to protect her anymore, they're trying to protect themselves. And to do that, they have to let her go. Can you feel the shift, chosen one? What happens when the very people who once held the power to protect you are now abandoning you? What does it feel like when the truth forces them to turn their backs on you to save themselves? Consider the story of former Enron executives who once thought their influence and power would protect them from the consequences of their fraudulent actions. But when the truth came to light, not only did their empire crumble, but they faced harsh legal repercussions that no amount of power or money could shield them from. They thought they could escape justice, but the law caught up with them. Look at the downfall of Lance Armstrong, whose career seemed invincible. He thought his lies and the control he held over the cycling world would protect him. But when the truth emerged, it wasn't just his reputation that was destroyed. It was his entire career. His support system, once loyal, abandoned him, and all that was left was the undeniable truth. And consider the case of disgraced Hollywood mogul Harvey Weinstein, who built an empire of power and influence. He believed he could hide his transgressions behind a veil of secrecy, but when the truth was exposed, the entire network of protection he had relied on fell apart. His downfall wasn't just about his actions, it was about the entire system of people who had covered up his misdeeds. And when the truth came crashing down, everyone involved had to answer for it. So, have you ever had to watch someone who once seemed untouchable lose everything they relied on? What happens when those who believed they were beyond the reach of justice are suddenly exposed for who they truly are? Do you ever wonder how long it takes for the truth to rise up and shake everything to its core? It may seem like a long time, but in the end, everything hidden comes to light. Chosen one, the moment her name appeared on the investigation list, she became a liability, a loose end that no one wanted to risk. The very people she once relied on for protection, those who had always shielded her, are now stepping away. One by one, they begin to distance themselves. The boyfriend, silent. The relatives who once vouched for her, gone. She calls, no one answers. She reaches out, no one responds. Do you ever wonder, chosen one, how quickly someone can go from feeling invincible to realizing that they are utterly alone? What happens when the walls you built around yourself collapse and you're left with no one to turn to? As Psalm 27:10 says, "Though my father and mother forsake me, the Lord will receive me." Even when everyone abandons you, there is one who will never leave you. Panic sets in. For the first time, she feels what it's like to be truly alone. The job she relied on is at risk. The career she thought was secure is shattered. No company wants an employee under criminal investigation, especially not for something this serious. If the prosecution moves forward, she's looking at criminal charges, job loss, a permanent stain on her record, and a future that she cannot fix. She bet everything on the wrong people. She thought their power was absolute, that they would always protect her. But now she understands. She thought she was untouchable, but now she's realizing something deeper. Have you ever found yourself in a position where you thought you had everything under control, only for it all to slip away piece by piece. How does it feel when everything you believed was solid begins to crumble? As 1 Peter 4:17 reminds us, "For it is time for judgment to begin with God's household, and if it begins with us, what will the outcome be for those who do not obey the gospel of God?" Divine judgment comes for all, regardless of status. Their power has limits. Your name does not. And no matter how much influence they have, they cannot stop what's coming. She made her choice. She betrayed you, and now she has to live with the consequences, alone, with no one left to save her. Do you ever wonder how the weight of your name shifts everything around you? How it stands firm in the face of betrayal, untouched by the world's fleeting powers? In Proverbs 18:10, "The name of the Lord is a fortified tower. The righteous run to it and are safe." Your name is a fortress, a power that cannot be undermined. She thought she was powerful. She thought she had protection, that she could do whatever she wanted and walk away untouched, that her connections were enough to shield her. But she forgot one thing. Your name holds more weight, not just in the physical world, but in the unseen. Your name isn't just a label. It's a force, a legacy, a crown that cannot be removed, no matter how many people try to tarnish it. It carries a weight that bends reality, a force that demands respect, even in silence. Can you see it now, chosen one? How your name holds power beyond what the world can comprehend. What happens when the very thing you rely on, the protection of others, fails, and you're left standing, grounded in your own strength? As everything crumbles around her, she's starting to understand. She thought she was untouchable. She thought she could leak your information, hand over your secrets and face no consequences. But in her mind, you were just another person, another target, another obstacle to remove. What if she had realized the true weight of your presence, chosen one? Could she have understood the forces she was challenging? She didn't realize who she was dealing with. The moment she betrayed you, the energy shifted. The same forces that had once kept her hidden, protected and covered are now stripping her bare. Because when you move against someone with spiritual authority, there is no escaping what comes next. The world responds differently to people like you. The weight of your name is not just built on reputation. It's built on something much deeper, something ancient, something undeniable. Can you feel it, chosen one? How the universe shifts when you walk with divine authority. The very system she relied on is now working against her. Every move she made is backfiring. She thought she had power, but now she's scrambling, watching everything slip through her fingers. She's realizing that the influence she once had was never truly hers. It was borrowed, gifted, conditional, and now it's been revoked. Have you ever seen someone scramble to hold on to something that was never really theirs to begin with? What happens when the illusion of power shatters and you're left with nothing but the reality of your actions? She's making calls, trying to find someone who will fight for her, trying to pull the same strings that saved her in the past. But no one is answering. The same people who once stood by her are now silent. The family that used to pull her out of trouble? Nowhere to be found, because they know something she never understood. They know that your name is one they should have never played with. She underestimated you. She thought you were just another person, someone she could manipulate, someone whose life she could tamper with. But she didn't realize that your name carries power beyond connections. Your presence alone shifts rooms. Consider the story of Oprah Winfrey. She grew up in poverty, yet her name today carries immense weight, far beyond what most people can imagine. Her influence shifts the way people think, the way companies operate, and the way media affects society. Her presence alone commands respect. Then look at Nelson Mandela. Despite spending 27 years in prison, his name became a symbol of justice, peace, and strength that no amount of oppression could diminish. Mandela's name carries a legacy that changed an entire nation, not through connections, but through unwavering strength and moral authority. And take the story of Steve Jobs. He revolutionized the tech industry, and today his name is synonymous with innovation, creativity, and vision. Jobs built a legacy that goes beyond the companies he founded. His name carries a weight that shifts industries and changes lives. Chosen one, have you ever thought about the power of your name, the unseen force it carries? Your name opens doors that hers never could. Your energy moves things in ways she will never understand. The very systems she trusted are turning against her. The laws she ignored enforcing themselves. The career she thought was stable, hanging by a thread. And the people she once called friends fading into the background, distancing themselves as if they never knew her. How often do we see someone's world unravel when they thought they had everything under control, only to find themselves alone? Can you feel the magnitude of divine justice unfolding? Chosen one, she wanted to take your power, to humiliate you, to bring you down, but all she did was destroy herself. Because when someone moves against a chosen one, they are not just fighting a person, they are fighting divine order, and divine order does not lose. Have you ever realized, chosen one, how some battles aren't just between people, but between divine forces? What happens when someone takes a step against the flow of divine balance? She thought she could erase you, thought she could tarnish your name, thought she could rewrite the truth. Instead, she erased herself. And this is only the beginning. In Galatians 6:7, do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows. Every action she took is now catching up to her, as the harvest of her choices is far more than she could handle. She laughed when she thought she got away with it, smug, confident, untouchable. She believed her betrayal was just another move in the game, another secret buried beneath the weight of her family's influence. She assumed no one would connect the dots, no one would ever trace it back to her. But divine justice doesn't operate on human timelines. It watches, it waits, then it strikes with precision. Have you ever watched someone believe they were untouchable, only to see their foundation crumble when the truth comes to light? Can you see how divine justice doesn't rush? It waits for the perfect moment to reveal the truth. Chosen one, everything she tried to keep hidden is surfacing. The whispers have turned into reports. The rumors have become official investigations. Digital footprints she thought were erased. They're being pulled up, examined, and followed straight to her. Can you feel the shift, chosen one? How the things we thought were hidden are exposed when the time is right. Her name is no longer protected. It sits on lists she never imagined. Criminal records, legal documents, internal investigations. She can't control the outcome. The moment she handed over your information, she sealed her fate. What she assumed was a harmless favor has snowballed into something much bigger than she can handle. Every single person involved is being exposed. Have you ever wondered how a small act of betrayal can unravel so much? How quickly something that seems small can grow into something unstoppable? This isn't just her downfall, it's an unraveling of everything built on deception. Authorities aren't stopping at the surface, they're digging deep, tracing connections, mapping out every manipulation, uncovering just how far this betrayal extends. What began as a single act of disloyalty has triggered an avalanche. In Proverbs 14:11, the house of the wicked will be destroyed, but the tent of the upright will flourish. The web she built on lies is collapsing, and what's built on righteousness is standing strong. The karmic feminine who orchestrated all of this is witnessing her entire plan collapse. She thought she was playing chess, moving people like pieces, setting traps no one would see coming. But divine order had already positioned its pieces long before she even touched the board. Can you see, chosen one, how every move made by those with ill intentions is met with divine correction? How the universe aligns to restore balance? She's losing everything. Desperation sets in. She scrambles to shift blame, throwing anyone under the bus just to save herself. She pleads, bargains, looks for a way out, but there is no escape. The Bible in Isaiah 59:15 says, "Truth is nowhere to be found, and whoever shuns evil becomes a prey." The Lord looked and was displeased that there was no justice. She thought she could escape, but now justice is finding her. What they tried to do to you is happening to them. The same systems they once relied on are now working against them. The same people they manipulated are backing away. The same energy they sent out is returning, multiplied. This is balance restoring itself. Do you see how everything comes full circle, chosen one? How the energy you put out into the world, whether good or bad, always finds its way back to you. You didn't have to seek revenge. You didn't chase justice. You didn't step outside your power, because you didn't need to. Divine order is delivering the lesson they never thought they'd have to learn. How often do we fight for something that's already been set in motion? Do you see how divine justice is in play, even when we are unaware? Chosen one. The chosen ones are not so easily undone. The world she built is collapsing. She thought she was secure, protected by the power of those around her. She believed she could play a dangerous game and walk away unscathed. That her betrayal would be forgotten, buried under the weight of her connections. But life doesn't work that way. Consequences don't wait forever. As Psalm 37 verse 9 reminds us, "For those who are evil will be destroyed, but those who hope in the Lord will inherit the land." Your inheritance, chosen one, is not of this world. Your legacy is beyond human power. Her job, the one she took for granted, the one that made her feel important, is slipping through her fingers. Investigations have begun. Questions are being asked. Employers don't want to be tied to a scandal, and they definitely don't want an employee whose name is now appearing in legal documents. She's become a liability. The same system she thought would protect her is now turning against her, exposing her every action. Meetings are happening behind closed doors. Decisions are being made without her. Emails go unanswered, calls ignored. The people she once laughed with at work are now whispering about her in hallways. They're all waiting for the inevitable, her termination. And when it happens, she'll have no one to blame but herself. Do you see how everything she believed was secure is now slipping through her fingers, chosen one? What happens when the consequences catch up with someone who thought they were invincible? But losing her job is just the beginning. The family she once depended on is stepping away. They see the storm approaching, and they won't let themselves be caught in the wreckage. They've spent years protecting their reputation, building influence and making sure their name stays clean. She's now a stain on that name, and stains are removed quickly. One by one, they distance themselves. The same people who vouched for her, who cleaned up her messes, who assured her they would always have her back, silent. Because when it comes down to it, self-preservation always wins. The boyfriend she sacrificed everything for, nowhere to be found. The people she called friends, vanishing. She stood on the wrong side of this fight, and now the truth is out. She used to be the one whispering in rooms, planting lies, manipulating situations. She thought she was untouchable, that she could control the narrative. But now she's the subject of those whispers. Her name is being spoken in hushed tones. People are dissecting her past, exposing her actions, tearing apart the web of deception she thought was impenetrable. This isn't just karma, this is justice, making sure she understands exactly what she did. Chosen one, the weight of your name cannot be undone. You stand with divine authority, and that alone is more powerful than any connection or influence in the world. Beloved chosen one, she thought she could violate your privacy and never face consequences. She thought she could betray you and walk away unscathed. She believed she could steal from you, your information, your peace, your dignity, and never lose anything herself. But she was wrong. She's losing everything. Not because you fought back, not because you sought revenge, but because energy always returns to its sender. She will regret every move she made against you. She will regret thinking you were weak. She will regret assuming her power was greater than yours. And she will never forget the day she learned this lesson the hard way. This is why you must be careful about who you allow into your energy. They thought they could move against you and walk away untouched. They believed their influence, their connections, and their schemes would shield them from consequences. They assumed they had the power to rewrite the truth, to manipulate reality, to erase what was never theirs to touch. But they underestimated who you are. Your name is not just a name. It carries weight, spiritually, energetically, and even in the physical world. What they tried to use against you has become the very thing destroying them. The same forces they trusted to protect them have turned against them. They should have never played with your name, because in the end, deception never wins. Manipulation always backfires, and divine justice never misses its mark. Stay in your light, chosen ones. The battle is already won. I want to take a moment to thank you for your presence and support. Whether you choose to donate through Super Thanks or not, I am deeply grateful for your time and energy spent here. Your belief in this message and your journey are what truly matter. If you feel moved to contribute, your support through Super Thanks will be a great blessing to this channel. But know this, your energy is already a gift, and I appreciate you immensely. May peace, protection, and divine favor continue to surround you, chosen ones. Keep walking in your light, for your name carries a power no one can erase. May all that is meant for you come to pass, and may your path be filled with blessings and abundance. Stay strong, stay true, and remember, your light is the beacon that guides you forward.